Hey there, Ryan Kingslien here, founder of UArtsy. So what is Zmodeler all about? What is the potential? How do we work with this thing? And is it really just another way to polygon model? Another of what, 1,000 different ways we have as CG artists? Well, in this video I'm going to show you it's not really just another way. It's actually a fully integrated process, and it's a really awesome way to kind of create basic shapes and expand on all the hard surface that's going on. Now you may have seen this before, but I want to just quickly show you my diagram of how ZBrush breaks things down. There's an axes that we work with as artists. We often work with a what and a how, right? So in what, we deal with soft, we deal with hard surface stuff. In how, we deal with loose, and we deal with controlled. In the beginning with ZBrush 2, it was way up here, and everybody's models were blobby. You had to use the smooth brush, and you've seen over time it start to make its trajectory over here into hard surface, and experiment with things that are down in hard surface and controlled. Anybody remember some of the polish loops? If I remember right, there was a couple features in terms of polish that just were a little too controlled. It's not really ZBrush's forte. This is more engineering, and you need millimeters and all kinds of stuff. What you see them doing is moving over here into loose and hard surface so that they can start to own this whole upper block of the quadrant that belongs to us artists. So that done and said, this model here was completely done here with Zmodeler, and keep in mind, it's not just Zmodeler, right? It was done with Zmodeler, and there were some insert multi-mesh brushes, and there was some transposing, and there was some masking, and there was a bunch of other things. It's just part of the process. So let me show you real quick some of the ways we did this. Now, if we're going to start a gun, you could start it, as they say, brick by brick, and you extrude out, and you extrude out, and you extrude out, right? And that sounds like pain to me. That is not fun for me. So I have a different way that I do this, and it gives me a totally different result. It gives me models like this. Let's see if I can find another one. Or like this. And it all comes from a model like that. So I'll sculpt something really quick from a sphere. I just select a sphere, use the move brush, push and pull it around, and then from there, like let's say here, for example, from here we are then able to get a form that looks about like that. Or in my case, I think it was up here a little bit. Yeah. Or up here. Turn poly frame on. And this is done through unified skin. I just set my resolution and my smooth off, and I say make unified skin. So let me show you that real quick. Here you go. Unified skin, set it to 32, make unified, and there you go. I have a little model that I can work with. So let me show you how we use Zmodeler here. Just in a real basic example, something you can get in and play with, because you can do this. I mean, that's just a sphere with move and AccuCurve on. Then unify it, come in here and start to see how Zmodeler can expand what you can do. Don't treat it as another polygon modeler. Treat it as an expansion of your creativity and your potential. So there's 3 ways in which Zmodeler interacts with you, and the polygon model, I should say. The face, edges, and the vertice. So let's turn polyframe on. You can just select a face and extrude out, or push in to delete. Real simple, right? You can pull out, and as you pull out, it will start to increment. So it helps beveling things. So we go out a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a lot. A little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a lot. And then we can do things like take a side, and then we can switch our format, our action, to inset, and say we want to inset all the polygroups of this white polygroup. See? And now we're going to say go back to QMesh and push in that purple polygroup. And look, it created a nice little scope of sorts right on the sides, something we can hang. Looks like we didn't have symmetry on, but that's cool because we're not going to leave it at just this. So we're going to undo, and let's turn symmetry on, And in this case, I want to move this in. So I'm going to say move, move, single, and just move it in a little bit. And then I'm going to go back to QMesh, and I'm going to say pull out a little bit, pull out a little bit. There you go. I just like how that kind of gives me this quality. Then we might say try to pull some polygons up off of the top. And I'll press Alt to create a temporary poly group, and then just pull up. Because right now, well, it's selecting the whole thing. There we go. Single poly group should be just pulling one of these things up. So if it's happening like that, save. But I'm going to jog its memory here a little bit. There we go. All right. These temporary poly groups all kind of behave alike. And there we go. All right. So we're having correct behavior, but I really actually do want what we saw. I want flat and poly group. About like that. Then I'm going to come into this edge. I'm hovering over an edge, and I'm going to say bevel. That's all I got to do. And why don't we give this some, how do I say it? Some smoothing. But we don't want to smooth like this because that's kind of boring. We want it just to be a little beveled, right? That's going to be one of the beautiful things. We can increase coverage to get it more and more smooth, but really we just want our coverage somewhere to give us like a little bit of a bead. And not too much, because it'll start to interfere with what the rest of the stuff that you're doing. Now, this is all cool, fine, great. You can extrude, you can, do all kinds of things. But where it really becomes powerful is with this flat and poly group, or the islands, or things of that nature, because now we can start to kind of change things up a little bit. So I'm going to press Control W to just put everything as one group. And you'll see me do that. Control W, and I just put everything as one group. And now we could say, just organically work with a large area, like that, right? So that does some interesting things right there, right off the bat. And then we can push that in as well. That's going to do some interesting things. But maybe before we do that, we're going to want to, say, split this here. So maybe we can put a barrel in there. And then we have QMesh on, flatten poly group. So I'll push that back a little bit, and then a little bit more. All right? And then what happens if I come in here and do this? Well, that's kind of crazy. So maybe we do that, maybe not. Maybe we set ourselves up for some success later on, and we'll put a little tube in there, or we can start to flatten this. Let's say take this little edge, and I'm going to move that. So hover, and I want to move that back. See what we can do. All right, we'll adjust that one later. Right now what I want to do is see how else I can start to modify the form, the contour of this. So we can, of course, switch over to our sculpting brushes. Why not, right? It's a sculpt. I mean, this whole thing is a sculpt. So we can say start to adjust. Maybe we want to keep that straight, but on the bottom we want to give this more of an evil quality. And we can come in with AccuCurve, which is going to be really great for creating some really crazy form. Let's get that a little bit more. Mask this. Let's mask all the way up there so I can kind of, and all of that. Let's turn symmetry off, or perspective off. So you can sculpt, and then after you've sculpted it, continue to polygon model it. So now let's say, take a look here. What do we want to do with these guys? Maybe we want to pull something out. So let's say switch over to Zmodeler, select that area, poly mesh, and I want to say single poly group. Yeah, perfect. And then all I got to do is just click to make that next section happen. Or lower my draw size, and I'm going to just manually do that. There we go. So now we've kind of closed that off. We have this little hole here in the center. We can close this off as well. There. And it's all happening automatically for us. But now why don't we add like a magazine cartridge? So I'm just going to Control W, Alt, and then I'm going to move that out. And give it what? Control W, Alt. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And now use transpose. Why not? And let's use mask lasso, and let me get these guys. And then mask lasso. Maybe we want to kind of push this in, right? So this is where Zmodeler's tools can be quite powerful. Let's see if we can actually just use a poly group, a little grouping. Let's first Control Q or W, and then see if we can use Zmodeler to just push in something. Well, now instead of a magazine, we get a little bit of a handle. But if you wanted, we could edge loop this bottom portion. Let's hover over the edge, and I'll say insert. There you go. And now push that in. A little more control. You can do the whole thing here. Or sometimes you want this to be a totally separate piece of geometry. So let's back up. Now, these are all some of the things that we can do, but like I said, sometimes you just want this to be a separate piece of geometry. So let's do something different. I'm going to come in here with Q Mesh. We've got our little selection. I'm going to Alt click. I'm just going to click and drag that out, but I'm going to press Control. And you see what it did? Extracted a little shell. So I'm going to do it again. Control, there you go, and then I will extrude that out. But in this particular case, I'm going to have to do that again. There we go. And now it's a totally different piece of geometry. I can use transpose. Let's just see if that's going to mess up. Yep. So mask all of that out. Use the move. Push it in. You know, it's giving me trouble. Polygroup, auto group. Yeah. End of that trouble. So now, totally separate piece of geometry, and we can treat that just like anything else. We can Z-model that and insert some edges. So now we can just look at this one piece. Da da da. Da da da. Now, this is a little bit of what's possible, some of the things that you can do, but there's a lot of design choices and stuff that can happen when you start to adjust the way in which you use the modeler and the target. That's the thing that's really important for me to communicate to you. And then also, we really should focus on one trick right now. How do you get kind of more of a graduated form in there? So sometimes you can pull out and it'll do that, but sometimes it won't. So sometimes you have to delete it and then you put it back in. I'm going to delete that and then I'm going to put it back in. There you go. So that's a nice little step for me, and I don't know exactly what these parts are going to do. So let's delete that. And careful, you gotta, sometimes if it switches that shape, you just drag your pin back. And again, all you have to do is click to repeat an action. Da, 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 da. There we go. Just deleted all of that. I'm not sure I wanted to delete that. Let's turn perspective on, and I keep going back and forth between these modes. But let's pull this out, yeah, and get some of that contouring to look a little bit less. And Control W. Let's see if we can insert an edge loop right there. And an edge loop right there. And then I'm going to pull those in to create a bit of a opening. But we can also select that entire area there. In fact, let's not select that side. Move, and then just pull those in to start to create some nice shape. But now we've got a little bit more complexity being added in here, which is kind of cool. But we can go even further. We come in here with, say, oh, I don't know, well, why don't we sculpt that? Or why don't we come in with edge and bevel? And let's do edge loop partial. That's just going to give me some more topology to start to work with. So let's see. And what happens if I do that here? And here, or here. And maybe we need to start pulling in some of these faces. So Q mesh, Control W, and let's pull this into. Sometimes you can't get them pulled in exactly the way you want. You got to do a little bit of magic. Although that's kind of interesting. In fact, why don't we just pull all of that in? Now, it's not liking the different angles. So, single polygon, and we're going to move. And single polygon. See if we can start to piece all of that stuff together. Now let's just pull up a little bit of a site. We need to turn dynamic back on and Alt. Perfect. Gonna go down one more? No. So there we go. We got our perspective on. Get ourselves a little bead in there. And now let's see if we can do something. I'm gonna see if I can get a little bit of a distance in here. Let's see. I'm gonna move this edge. I'm gonna slide it. And I'm gonna polygroup and polygroup. Inset. Q mesh. Polygroup all. There. Created a little opening in there for something. And we just keep moving. Now I'm doing this all at random in real time with you. And eventually what happens is you get to a stage that really works for you. And the stage I got to was here. So we're 20 minutes in. Took me, I don't know, about 45 minutes or, whatnot to get to this stage. including trying out a few designs and then moving things around. The important thing is get a feel for it, how it works. If you come to this with expectations that it's polygon modeling like Maya, then it's not going to work, right? This is just like anything else in life. You got to watch what your expectations are in it and what you really want to get out of it. So in this particular case, I can tell you dead straight, Zmodeler is not pure polygon modeling because that's already done. And it's done well for people who want it controlled. Zmodeler is, in my opinion, the first foray into this polygon modeling in a very free and artistic way. This is just it's really the first opening salvo for us to move forward. Now, once you've got a form that you're kind of happy with, that you're ready to move forward with, you just come to dynamic subdivision and you apply that subdivision. You can see now it's been divided and now everything's kind of it's got enough geometry to keep what it was at that stage. And so then this is when I would come in, let's just go back to my model. This is when I come in and I start using something like the multi-mesh brush. And in this case, let's say we could use the gun and let's turn dynamic off. In fact, let's just apply it. And then I'm going to go down one and delete lower and higher. Okay. If you do it with it on, then it's quite a problem. So I'm pressing M, and we'll do some things like see what's in here, and transpose, push those things in a little bit. That's too much there, so let's add this. Yeah. Turn perspective off. And in this case, it's just adding extra details. I even at one point I put in, let's just go M as in Mary, and I want this piece, I think it was. And I'm going to use it to give me extra grain right in that area. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about, getting in there and just trying out different types of form to see what really is working for you. And then once you've got, let me just put one more in. I'm going to go M for Mary, and there was one that was quite usable. Yeah. So let's go in with this one, and I'm going to embed that a little bit. In fact, actually, what I want to do is pull that out so I can rotate that around. And then I'll embed that in there a little bit. Now that I have that, I can control, click and drag, and start to kind of work this in multiple places. We can pull this out a little bit. Doesn't really matter to me if it gets stretched at this point, because it's really just being used in the inside when I'm positioning something. To just kind of futz around with the different forms. Another way of maybe doing this in thumbnailing. But once you've got this done, then you can kind of merge everything into one and Z-remesh it to see what kind of trouble you can get into. And, you know, not too much longer after you've thrown in some parts, because there's a lot of cool multi-mesh brushes. I really recommend you check out Pixelator's Spaceship. That thing is just nuts. All the stuff that's in there. Look at that, it's so small. you got to add all that stuff in. So you can get a whole bunch of different shapes and forms and details in there relatively quickly while getting pretty close to a production model. I mean, pretty close. You know, I haven't done this yet, but let's just see what. Let's remove the. Let's go back to the base model. Yeah. And I'm going to undo all those little pieces I just added because I don't want to see what they would do to my topology. let's just see what ZRemesher can do with this. So we're going to say take it to half. Okay, that took 23 seconds, but let's check out the topology that it made for me. It's pretty neat. You know, usually games you're not going to kind of ZRemesh them like this, you just decimate them. So we know that's super easy. Just come into Decimation Master. But if you have to have it for animation or something, there you go. A lot of cool stuff you can do, all of it starting with Zmodeler. And sometimes bringing Zmodeler in afterwards. So now I've got a model in here, and maybe there's a part of this that I want to adjust the form in. And so I've got a lot of polygons here. How can I polygon model this on a low resolution level in the exact same way? Well, that's where some of those tools come in that I was showing you. So we go into Zmodeler, we select a face, and we say, hey, let's do flat poly group. And maybe there's something that will allow us to kind of pull form in here. Start to treat certain areas differently. Let's make sure we're selecting a polygon face. Right? A lot of different stuff that we can kind of start to, it's very dense. There we go. We can see where this all will go. But polygon modeling does not have to stop right there. There's a lot of other things that we can do to make it happen. And I just wanted to give you a quick look. I know quick for me and you might mean different things. We're at 26 minutes, but it's pretty comprehensive. You should be able to create some crazy shape. Like, let's find our shape again. Unify skin that and start creating something weird. You know, here's another thing I created. Exact same form, just pulled out different stuff. I'll go in and use Qmodeler to kind of push some stuff around. Maybe I want that back. There we go. There we go. Nice way to get in and start playing while still being able to sculpt inside of ZBrush. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. Have a fantastic day. Happy ZBrushing.